and Ashish from Home Credit India.
Marketing is all about science and art, and data is making it more scientific.
When you do the analyzing synthetic versus the real-time data, you pivot to the new business also. The same way the marketer has to see, they have to mix up both the data and they have to come out with their own observations also.
So what we're doing right now is actually using data to be able to predict which will be the right college for you based on psychometric tests as well as questionnaires that we roll out to the kids when they reach out to us for counseling.
For a customer to be able to decide from one business to another is about trust in a brand comes from things where underlining fact can be data, but the storytelling has to be very, very strong.
Tune in to the next episode to find out. I'm Jasper Reed, and this is Trailblazers.
Vielleicht nur als 5%.
Hi everyone, welcome to WION Live broadcast from New York City. I'm Susan Tehrani. First, let's get you up to speed with this hour's headlines. All 74 people on board the Russian plane, including 65 Ukrainian prisoners of war headed for an exchange, have been killed, says the Belgorod governor. A top Russian lawmaker alleges Kyiv shot down the plane near Belgorod. Israel mourns their fallen soldiers as pressure grows against the Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. Heavy fighting continues near hospitals in Gaza's Khan Yunis. Iran's hardline Guardian Council bans former pragmatist President Hassan Rouhani from standing again in an election in March. The election is for the Assembly of Experts, which appoints and can dismiss the supreme leader. Storm Jocelyn hit Scotland, causing travel disruptions and suspected damage to rail tracks. Coming days after Storm Isha, Jocelyn is the 10th named storm of the season to hit Britain. Donald Trump has won the New Hampshire primary, making win the New Hampshire primary 3 times. Last we checked, a little over 95% of the votes were counted, where Donald Trump had secured 54.5% so far, and Nikki Haley is trailing second with 43.2%. The polls closed at 8 p.m. local time on Tuesday. To the surprise of many, Haley's second position has not prompted her to quit the race. In fact, right after the results, she went on stage and called herself a fighter.
New Hampshire is first in the nation. It is not the last in the nation. This race is far from over. There are dozens of states left to go. And the next one is my sweet state of South Carolina.
The truth is that the odds are against Nikki Haley. New Hampshire was her best bet. It was a state with moderate Republicans and independents. Haley spent tens of millions of dollars on her campaign there and even had the endorsement of the state's governor. But she still couldn't win New Hampshire. The question is, how does she expect to do better in more conservative states? In broader Haley world, there are now concerns among some of her donors about what happens next. Her team needs to figure out if she can actually afford to stay in the campaign longer. After the early results, Donald Trump addressed his supporters. The win confirms his status as the frontrunner for the Republican presidential nominee. In fact, history is on his side as well. Any candidate who has won both the Iowa caucus and the New Hampshire primary has gone on to become the presidential nominee. Donald Trump also became the first Republican presidential candidate who was not a White House incumbent to carry the nation's first two contests. While Trump spoke about his victory, he also aired frustration with rival Nikki Haley.
She was up and I said, wow, she's doing like a speech like she won. She didn't win, she lost. You know, we won New Hampshire 3 times now, three. We win it every time. We win the primary, we win the generals, we've won it, and it's a very, very special place to me. It's very important. And just a little note to Nikki, she's not going to win. She's not going to win.
Nevada is next on the primary list, but more importantly will be South Carolina on the 24th of February. This is Nikki Haley's home state. She's projected to lose there as well. Trump has the endorsement of most of the state's Republican establishment, including Senator Tim Scott. The former president's legal battles have become a successful campaign tool. It has worked in his favor till now, something he even says doesn't know why. All right, for more on this, we are joined by our correspondent, Nick Harper, live from Manchester, New Hampshire. Nick, great to see you. You're on the ground there. What are your key takeaways from what happened last night in New Hampshire?
Well, Susan, it's all over here in New Hampshire, and in many ways, the whole primary contest is over as well. I think there is that sense of inevitability that Donald Trump, after winning big in Iowa and winning here in New Hampshire, is very much on course to clinch that Republican nomination. Nikki Haley says that she is staying in the fight, but it's really a matter of time. You mentioned the calendar over the next few weeks, Nevada, then South Carolina, even South Carolina, where she was governor but is expected to struggle. I think one of the takeaways is really this was her biggest hope of winning any state contest, but also trying to change the trajectory of this primary contest between her and Donald Trump. She was presenting herself as an alternative to Donald Trump, but voters here in New Hampshire quite simply said they didn't want an alternative. They wanted Donald Trump himself. She was hoping to win over those moderate, independent voters, many of them college educated. And she is going to struggle further down the line in other states because Donald Trump dominates when it comes to working class, non-college educated voters. And we're going to see many of those in future state primary contests. So she had to win here, or at least come very close in second place behind Donald Trump. That 11 to 12% gap between the two of them suggests that she just didn't do enough. Even President Biden has accepted that it now has come down to a rematch between himself and Donald Trump, putting out a statement last night after those results came out saying it is now clear that Donald Trump will become the Republican Party nominee.
Yeah, very interesting to see as well. You talked about President Biden himself. It seems he's turning to White House aides to help him with his low poll numbers on the campaign trail. His critics say the more he stays inside, the better chances he has of becoming president once again. But frankly, it seems that he's trying to really, you know, shore up this group of aides around him for his reelection campaign. What are your thoughts regarding Joe Biden moving forward into these primaries?
Yeah, Joe Biden is still having that difficult juggling act between running the country but also trying to run a re-election campaign. He's getting out on the campaign trail, often speaking about this idea of Bidenomics, that he has done well for the economy. And yet the problem is, in national polls amongst voters, that there is this perception gap. They don't feel that the economy is doing well. They still feel that inflation is too high, that prices at the grocery store are still out of reach for many of them. And I think there is this issue for President Biden that he needs to find a message that resonates with voters. And at the moment, the economy, which he's pushing hard on, doesn't seem to be the issue, because I was in Iowa, I was here in New Hampshire as well, and speaking to voters here on the ground, they keep coming back to this idea of inflation and the economy. And they feel that under President Trump, his 4 years in the White House, America did much better, and that things have gone in reverse gear over the last 3 or so years under President Biden. So inflation and the economy is something that is a message for both sides. But at this stage, it seems to be winning out more for Republican voters, a motivating force for them, which is likely to propel them to the polls in November.
Right. And we also have that issue of the border crisis, which even those here in a blue state like New York are concerned about. We'll see how abortion plays out moving forward in the general as well. Nick Harper, thank you so much for joining us. Always great to talk to you. U.S. President Joe Biden is turning to White House aides to fix his low poll numbers. Reports claim two senior-most aides are leaving to join Biden's re-election campaign in Delaware. According to a New York Times report, Biden is dispatching Deputy Chief of Staff Jen O'Malley Dillon and Senior Advisor Mike Dillon, had managed Biden's general election bid in 2020. And Mike Dillon is the U.S. president's longtime speechwriter and his most trusted political aide since the year 1980. Reports claim Dillon will manage the communication part of the campaign, while O'Malley Dillon is expected to oversee the execution of the campaign's path to 270 electoral votes, as it takes 270 electoral votes to win the 2024 presidential election. Recently, former President Barack Obama expressed a concern, and his concerns became public, where he suggested that the campaign needs more top-level decision makers at its headquarters. Obama's former campaign manager, Jim Messina, called the decision a smart move. Current campaign head Chavez Rodriguez is not being replaced, as Rodriguez will continue to supervise the day-to-day election process. Till now, Team Biden has projected a muted tone. The sudden changes have injected a sense of urgency into the campaign. A Russian military transport plane carrying 74 people, including 65 prisoners of war, crashed near the Ukrainian border in Russia's Belgorod region. Now, Russia has accused Kyiv of shooting down the military transport plane. The Speaker of the Russian parliament accused Kyiv of shooting down the plane. Another lawmaker claimed that 3 Ukrainian missiles were fired at it. Unverified visuals that have emerged show the plane crashing from a distance. Investigators and emergency workers are on the scene. The local governor of the region said an unspecified incident had occurred northeast of Belgorod city. He said he will inspect the site. The crashed military transport aircraft is designed to airlift troops, cargo, military equipment, and weapons. Russia is claiming that no passengers have survived the crash. Belgorod is an important Russian territory bordering Ukraine. It has come under frequent attack from Ukraine in recent months as part of its offensive against Moscow. This includes a missile strike in December that killed 25 people. The prisoner exchange was to be the 50th since the start of the war. Up until now, over 2,800 prisoners have returned to Ukraine. China's human rights record has been condemned at the United Nations in what was a rare scrutiny of the country's policies. Western nations slammed China for its treatment of Xinjiang Uyghurs and restrictions in Hong Kong. But Beijing said that it has made historic progress. This was at the UN Human Rights Council's Universal Periodic Review. At the meeting, all 193 UN member states review each other's human rights record every 5 years. The review is the first since the UN released a report back in 2022 saying the detention of Uyghurs and other Muslims in the Xinjiang region could amount to crimes against humanity. At the review, the UK called on China to cease the persecution of Uyghurs and Tibetans and allow genuine freedom without fear of surveillance, torture, forced labor, or sexual violence. The US said China should release all arbitrary detained individuals. Other countries, including Germany and Japan, raised concerns on human rights violations in Xinjiang and Tibet. Canada and other nations recommended that the national security law in Hong Kong be repealed. Critics say the law criminalizes dissent. While the review was underway, supporters of the rights of Tibetans, Uyghurs, and Hong Kong residents protesters outside the UN headquarters in Geneva. But China had lobbied non-Western countries for support ahead of the meeting, and many offered Beijing their backing. A clear split was evident. Bolivia commended China's effort to reduce deforestation. Burundi said that it had improved access to health care, but that's not all. Iran praised China's National Action Plan for Human Rights, while Ethiopia said applauds for China improving the criminal litigation system. Bhutan, which has recently been warming its relationships with Beijing, commended its significant progress in poverty alleviation. At the UN meeting, China continued to insist that it has made strides since its last review in 2018, lifting nearly 100 million people out of poverty. The Chinese ambassador also said that China's citizens engage in democratic elections and that freedom of religious beliefs is safeguarded.
Rise the Uyghur issue made the recommendation. It is mean we have to fight again. Her zaman bizi kullayan devletler tertip teşvik etmiş arkalı.
Russian assets worth about $300 billion are at the center of the European Union and Russia tensions. Since the war began in Ukraine, EU officials have been contemplating about what to do with these frozen assets. Latest reports suggest that officials are unlikely to confiscate those assets. The EU, the United States, Japan, and Canada froze Russia's central bank assets in 2022. Some $200 billion of that is held in Europe, mainly in the Belgian clearinghouse Euroclear. Confiscating these Russian assets and handling them over to Ukraine would help finance the war efforts. But European officials believe such actions could be too legally risky. One senior official said on the condition of anonymity that, quote, confiscation of the Russian assets is not going to happen. There is no agreement on this among EU member states. Officials are also concerned about the potential consequences for the euro currency. Investors might pull out of euro assets out of concerns their money might one day be seized as well. Moscow, too, has pledged that it would confiscate Western assets in Russia, which some reports put at $288 billion. Belgium's Euroclear has a substantial amount of assets in Russia, which could be seized by Moscow. That could pose a financial risk to the clearinghouse with global repercussions. Instead, the EU is likely to back a proposal to take over only the profits generated by the assets, leaving the principal untouched. Officials add that this could generate an estimated over $16 billion over 4 years that could be transferred to Ukraine.